Hi, everyone. I am Melissa F. Kalin, the founder of the Michigan Aurora Chasers and the author of the book Beyond the 45th Parallel, The Beginner's Guide to Chasing Aurora in the Mid-Latitudes. I'm excited today to share with you an online version of the presentation that I've been giving around the state, around the region, and some of the tips I've been giving upon invitation, even around the world. So this is really a sort of a presentation that is a guide for beginners. If you're just learning how to catch the Northern Lights, if you're just getting started looking for some beginner tips, or maybe you're starting to see the Northern Lights more often, but you're looking to see them more and learn how to catch them more, this presentation is for you. Um, so let's get right into it. This is Chasing the Aurora Beyond the 45th Parallel, and my cover image here features a photo by Shannon Keevee in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. This was taken right here in my home state of Michigan during a beautiful aurora display. So, a little bit about me. I've been chasing the aurora now for over 13 years. I first got started when I was living in Minnesota near the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, surrounded by light pollution. And so I had that challenge to overcome. I've written the book, obviously, Beyond the 45th Parallel. It's part of the 45th Parallel series. This is the second edition, and it has lots of great tips and guides for beginners, including a digital resource guide. I was recently invited to become an Aurora columnist for Amateur Astronomy magazine, writing about different Northern Lights topics. And I've been fortunate enough to be invited to be a tour guide for the Alumni Association, leading folks to the Northern Lights in Iceland over a 10-day trip. We had such a great time. I've been invited back to lead a tour in Finland in 2026. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I've also been a NASA social media ambassador, going behind the scenes at the launch of the Solar Orbiter in 2020. And I'm a writer at heart. So I actually studied and majored in journalism at Miami University, Ohio, and found a love of Aurora through as an amateur space weather enthusiast. So I don't have a PhD in astrophysics or anything like that, but I can help you with tips for beginners to get you started. I also, through my love of Aurora and getting involved in the community, became the co-founder of the annual Aurora Summit, celebrating the art, culture, science, and photography of the aurora. And that is a 3-day weekend event that is open to the public every year. So I have caught the aurora now in 4 different states, including Alaska, and 3 countries, including Iceland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. I went to Alaska to celebrate 10 years of chasing the aurora, and over the course of 8 nights, caught the aurora 7 out of 8 nights, including on the plane arriving into Fairbanks and the plane departing from Fairbanks. So that was a really amazing trip, with Cosmic Chaos Adventures. I also had the opportunity in March to go to the Northwest Territories of Canada in Yellowknife, which some say is the aurora capital of the world. And with beautiful clear skies, we caught all sky aurora 4 out of 4 nights. And 2 of those nights had brilliant neon corona overhead. So really fantastic. I also, as if I wasn't doing enough, decided to adopt a puppy 2 years ago. His name is Elio. He's named after Helios for the sun. And so Elio, the sun dog, he has already seen his first aurora, his first corona, his first total solar eclipse, and his first Steve, which is something, if you don't know, we're going to talk about. So just fun facts. But in my work with the Michigan Aurora Chasers, I've gotten really involved. We've found a community that loves having events, loves having opportunities to get together and really share our passion and wonder with the night sky. And we are fortunate here in Michigan to be home to 3 international dark sky parks and 1 international dark sky sanctuary, which is a step above, with some of the most pristine dark skies and quality skies in the world. And so at the time of this presentation, Beaver Island International Dark Sky Sanctuary and State Wildlife Research Area was one of only 23 dark sky sanctuaries in the world. This photo shows that beautiful landscape taken by Justin Miller, one of our group experts. And I love this photo because on one side you can see the bright pink aurora happening at really high altitudes, showing us that color when it pops on camera. On the opposite side, you see this really stale yellow or orange color, and that is actually the light pollution of cities, which can be seen up to 60 to 100 miles away from any major city. So you may think you're in the country with dark skies, but take a look at the map and guess again, because typically this light pollution can travel extremely far distances. Now, right through the middle, if you're new to astronomy or the night sky, is the beautiful Milky Way. And I had the opportunity to go out to Beaver Island recently and experience this view of the Milky Way for myself. It is the most stars I've ever seen in my life, and you can see the Milky Way in more detail, possibly than ever before. So, highly recommend that. Here is a photo of the Northern Lights taken by admin Christina Cantu Sharp, who volunteers for the Michigan Aurora Chasers, and she called the photo Northern Dawn. And what I love about this photo is, okay, first of all, if you're familiar with Michigan or the Great Lakes region at all, you might recognize this bridge. This is the Mackinac Bridge, and it is extremely, extremely tall. In fact, the middle of the bridge, those structural formations rise high, high into the sky. So if that's tall, look at those pillars of the aurora and imagine how much taller it was on this night. No, this morning. So this photo was taken at about 6 o'clock in the morning on a day in September of 2024. And I love it so much because Aurora in Latin actually means dawn, and we often call it the aurora borealis. And in Latin, borealis means northern or north. So aurora borealis means the northern dawn. There's a legend that goes way back to Greek and Roman mythology that talks about how Aurora was the goddess of the dawn, and her job was every morning to escort the chariot of the sun god Apollo into the sky to start daytime. And so, if you've ever had trouble catching the Northern Lights late at night in the evening, we usually stay up late till 11 o'clock, midnight, looking for Northern Lights. Maybe get up early instead, because for centuries, people have talked about how this is a phenomena that happens at dawn. And I just love that story. When I first got started chasing, it took me 5 epic failures. I went to great distances and great expense to try to have a wonderful first aurora experience. And it was finally near dawn when I caught my first aurora on purpose and visible with brilliant color to the naked eye. So this is a photo of the corona. If you're not aware, corona is a more rare aurora formation. It's often considered the holy grail of aurora chasers, and it's known for happening in the most northern parts of the world. Or if you're chasing the southern lights, the aurora australis, maybe the most southern parts of the world. But the corona happens during really strong aurora displays, and it will come straight above you where the rays and veils and colors and twists and spirals, all those shapes of the aurora converge in the center in the apex of the sky above your head. And when you see all those veils and rays converge and start sort of reacting off each other and sort of playing off each other visually, that's when you know you had corona. And so this photo of corona was taken by Nate Stovall, another admin of the Michigan Aurora Chasers, who's actually headed up to Alaska to lead Aurora tours for North Star Adventures, his new company. So Corona is really awesome, but we can see so many different formations of the aurora now, especially with the cameras that we have available to us almost 24/7. Some of those newer phone cameras, you can capture aurora even if you weren't prepared with a camera and tripod. and we can see formations maybe we've never seen before. So here's an image of a corona taken by Christina Cantu Sharp, but not only is this a corona in that main image, it also has a tiny little green fragment. And that's actually a fragment like aurora emission. It's a type of aurora formation. And last October in 2024, this was spotted in Michigan for the first time in recorded history on that night with this photograph, which is really amazing because we can then submit this to scientists as citizen scientists and become part of the research that is informing what we know about aurora and aurora-like formations going forward. Um, so this is really incredible. You notice just that little green part is the Faye or the fragment-like aurora emission, and the rest of it is the corona. So this we start now to get into talking about emissions and different subauroral arcs. Some of these things are phenomena that are related to the aurora and caused by some of the same effects as the aurora, but or some of the same causes, but they're different. They have different mechanisms, or maybe there's a different process for producing what you're actually seeing. And we see some really interesting things, or we're starting to see some interesting things outside of the auroral zone and outside of the standard auroral oval. So these subauroral phenomenon are often called subauroral arcs, and there's many different types you can look for. So even if you're not very far north, especially if you're using the aid of a camera to help you spot more color and light at night, you can spot some of these arcs in different parts of the sky. The SAR arc, or the stable aurora red arc, is one of these formations, and this was spotted a lot in the summer of 2024. This photo is by admin Patrick Gruba, who caught the SAR arc over and over again last year, sometimes looking due west, and sometimes it can also be perhaps west into the south. And so this SAR arc is a really bright red. Sometimes it can be really thick when you're looking at the size of that ribbon, and it's one of those subauroral arcs that you can see in the sky. Another arc, or perhaps better yet, two arcs, subauroral arcs, are Steve and the picket fence. And so we have a photo here by Kim Masters Acker of the ribbon that cuts across the sky in really brilliant colors called Steve. It's often a really bright purple ribbon, purple and white, or some call it mauve and white. Um, and sometimes you can see it in a double arc with not only the purple stripe or purple ribbon, but the green stripe and purple and green. Then you'll also often see Steve with this picket fence, these really short, very defined, bright green or purple stripes, often green. And the picket fence almost always occurs beside Steve until recently when we started to notice that it can occur without Steve and Steve can occur without the picket fence. What is Steve and why is it named that? Well, there's a really cool story about that from the Alberta Aurora Chasers, a community that's credited with the discovery of what we know about Steve currently. They named it Steve. They didn't know what to call it. We gave it an acronym, so a backwards acronym, and now it actually stands for, dubbed by scientists, the strong thermal emission velocity enhancement. So that's what Steve is. It's a subauroral arc, though. And researchers now believe that Steve and the picket fence are two separate phenomena. So the picket fence, which we still call the picket fence, is also its own phenomena. Very cool. Now, you'll notice there's not much aurora in the sky behind these two subauroral arcs. They often appear after a really strong aurora has fired up and calmed down, and they will not appear directly north. In fact, they're often going to be in our region here in Michigan or the Great Lakes region, right above you. You're getting ready to go home, you're turning around, you're putting everything in your car, and then turn around once more, look behind you, and look up. And that's probably where you'll see this ribbon or this arc, often headed south-southwest in the sky. So that is another auroral phenomenon you can see. even if you're not in the north. Now, how do we catch the northern lights, though? There's a lot of things to consider. So, one thing we highly recommend in the Michigan Aurora Chasers is to scout out a good location. Go during the daylight, find a good spot with a north-facing view, and get the lay of the land while you can see everything. Then come back later with your camera or all your gear, whatever you want to set up. You'll know exactly where you want to be, exactly which way you want to face, and hopefully exactly what to look for. But uh, scouting out a location during the daylight can be really essential. Not only can sudden things happen, like a tree can fall down, we could have sudden flooding, we could have an avalanche of mud, you never know. When you're able to see those things, even an animal nest nearby during the daylight, and you come back later at night in the dark, you'll be aware of those hazards and you'll be able to protect yourself and plan ahead. But also, if you're into aurora photography, going there during the daylight can help you scout out the land and the view and look for the perfect composition. So maybe there's a really great tree you can frame against the northern lights. Maybe there's a bridge, a covered bridge, or you can find just the right reflection in a north-facing view of the river or a creek. If you go during the daylight, you're going to be able to see all that stuff much more clearly and set yourself up for success so that that night you know exactly where you want to put your tripod and set up all your gear. You don't have to waste a moment or miss a thing when the aurora starts to dance. You're also going to want the darkest skies possible near you, and this can be more important than going north, especially if there's cloud cover. So it's good to learn your dark skies and to learn your light pollution. You can use dark sky maps to help you find the best spots to really help with that. Um, Plan around the times of sunset, twilight, and moonrise. Sunset is actually going to take a long time. It's going to be shooting bursts of color up into the sky. All that ambient light is going to be hitting the clouds or perhaps the sky from below the horizon, even after the sun has gone down. And so, usually, when the aurora is kind of behaving like it typically does when it's not super strong. Usually we have to wait until astronomical twilight, which can be almost an hour after sunset or an hour before sunrise, for the skies to be truly dark enough to see the aurora glow. I really think that what we're looking at is a glow. You cannot see it during the daytime. You can see it on the day side if it's dark enough, but you cannot see the aurora when the sun is up. The sun is just too bright. The aurora does glow in the dark, and so the darker your skies, the better, which is why you stay out past twilight to get those darkest skies possible, closer to midnight or after, the better. And then avoid a full moon in Michigan, the Great Lakes region, anywhere in the northern tier of the US, or even, in places in Central Europe, other parts of the world, you're going to want to avoid a full moon because it's going to wash out the colors of the aurora, which can sometimes be really subtle. And then it pops in photographs. But you could wait to go out until after the moon sets if you have a window of time with dark skies, or you could go out before the moon rises. And so, even on a full moon night, there are things you can work around, and there are always exceptions. As admin Patrick Gruba and the Michigan Aurora Chasers likes to say, there's an exception to every rule, and that is definitely true when it comes to northern lights and aurora. We have seen really colorful, naked eye visible aurora in Michigan during a full moon. It has happened. It does happen. And so it is possible, but you're going to increase your chances of seeing more of that color and more of that light with lower moonlight. So try going out during the new moon or closer to the new moon. Um, Twilight also has just a really pretty glow, a really pretty green, sometimes a really pretty pink or orange. So watch your sky, know your sky, and that will help you know when to spot aurora. Keep in mind the forecast for aurora are not that reliable. This is an emerging science. Scientists and researchers are learning more about aurora every day and how to better predict it. And so, even we can only predict it about 3 days in advance, maybe 1 to 4 days in advance, technically. The fastest CME, a type of impact that can lead to aurora, to ever hit Earth fired from the sun and arrived at Earth in 14 hours. So it can come fast. And sometimes they're pretty slow, maybe up to 4 days. But generally, the 3 day forecast is the one you want to watch. Even that is not going to be super reliable, gives you more of an idea of what to expect that might be headed Earth's way. This is space weather. It comes to us from outer space and impacts Earth's magnetic field and then Earth's atmosphere. And so there's a lot to it. And it's just really hard to predict. But if you know the patterns of the northern lights, let's say everyone told you it was happening, it was really bright, it was really powerful, go outside, look in your backyard, and you run outside and you look, and bam, it's gone. You missed it. Well, don't fret, don't lose hope, because if you understand the patterns of the northern lights, sometimes when the aurora are really strong, they will come in a wave of activity and they'll really explode with color and light and do a lot of dancing and moving, have a lot of structure, and then enter a lull or sort of subdue for a while. And that could take 20 to 30 minutes, maybe even an hour. Then maybe they come back in another wave, and that wave is even stronger. And then they could go into another lull and then another wave, and that wave is even stronger yet. And so just because you missed it the first time, don't give up. The aurora has certain patterns, and once you learn to watch those, you can set yourself up for success and have another chance. I like to mention this in my beginners talks because I think it's really important, but there are three S's to keep in mind. One is your safety. Seeing the Northern Lights or the Southern Lights is on the bucket list of many people around the world. We would risk a lot for it, right? But it's not worth losing your life over. It's not worth taking risks that are going to put you in harm's way. So keep your safety in mind. Always plan for emergencies and pack well if you're going out in the winter. Whatever you have to do, have some extra water or snacks, an extra blanket. Then think about your sleep. This is going to be hard. Humans are not nocturnal, and so you're going to want to stay up all night if you really want a chance at seeing some aurora. It can be very, very brief. It can happen in the wee hours of the morning. So think about your sleep. Maybe you're the kind of person that, with a little bit of extra espresso, like me, can get through anything and you can drive all the way home. Maybe you're not, and you're going to want to have a backup plan, have a tent in your car in case you need to camp, or call a friend or neighbor and use their couch if you need to, or even their driveway to take a little cat nap. Have a backup plan for where you're going to sleep that night. And your sanity. So believe it or not, catching the northern lights can be hard. And the aurora coming to places like Michigan, the Great Lakes region of Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, out in Washington State, out in Maine or Vermont, or even other parts of the world. The aurora coming to places farther south like this can be really rare. And in 2024, our recent year on record, we really got kind of spoiled. The aurora came south. It came south a lot. The northern lights were strong enough to bring those views to people living further south. But it's difficult and you're not always going to be successful. So, my number one tip is to plan one other thing that is super exciting on your trip, so that in case you get completely aced and you see nothing, you don't have to go home empty-handed. Maybe you love a good sunset, and no matter what it looks like, as long as you get a photo at sunset, that's going to make you happy, and you'll consider that trip worth it. Maybe you're like me and you really love finding new 45th parallel signs. The 45th parallel is halfway between the North Pole and the equator, and you can find signs and markers all across the state and the country marking the 45th parallel. So I love the 45th parallel. It's sort of a magical northern type of place for me. It starts to indicate when we're really in a true northern environment with boreal forest and northern lights in colder climates. And I look for 45th parallel signs. It makes my night. Maybe, and I tell this joke at all of my talks, Maybe it's been 6 months since you let yourself have a donut and you really like donuts and you just have been cutting them out of your diet. You know what? Stop somewhere on your way out, get a donut, and enjoy it on the ride. You might miss the Northern Lights entirely, but at least on the way home, you can think about that delicious sweetness and tell yourself, well, I didn't see the aurora, but man, that was a good donut. I would do that again. That was totally worth it. So plan one other exciting thing, no matter what it is, to keep you going and to take the edge off of the disappointment. What does it take to see the aurora? Well, we need the right conditions here on the bottom in on Earth, mainly the weather, and then we also need the right conditions in space. So we talked a little bit about this, the right conditions on Earth. You need dark skies, a good moon phase, avoiding other obstacles like mist or fog. The farther north you are, the better, generally speaking, and you're almost always going to get a better view or more of a view the farther north you are. Now, there is an exception to every rule. Eyesight visibility. Keep this in mind. The aurora are not always going to be visible to your unaided eye. In fact, a lot of the really beautiful photographs that you're seeing on the internet and in the news and on TV and in popular media like movies, those were not that color when someone looked at it with the naked eye. It's the camera that captures all light and color in the sky, whereas our human eyes have limits. We're not nocturnal. We don't have great night vision, and we can only see so much at night. The camera can see everything, and then when you add in things like a 30-second exposure, 30 seconds of color stacked on top of each other, you get that color to pop. And so what you're going to see with your own eyes may not be what you expect from what you've seen on the internet. And that is maybe one of the best kept secrets of aurora chasing. But we're trying to tell you all the secrets to help you be successful. Sometimes when you see the northern lights, it's only going to look like a silver veil or a white cloud, and it's going to have different types of movement. It is transparent, but it can look so subtle to the eye that you might miss it. Now, the other thing I want to point out for the right conditions on Earth is starry nights. The first thing I do when I look for aurora, when I'm chasing, is look for a star. Yeah, Melissa, we need clear skies, obviously. What's the deal? It's more than that to me. When I can see a star, any star, especially more stars, that tells me a couple of things. That tells me one, I have a clear and unobstructed view to the highest altitudes in Earth's upper atmosphere. I can see the stars outside of our planet. So that's a clear view. It tells me there's no thin clouds in the way that are going to block me from viewing the aurora. It also tells me there's no fog, there's no mist in the way. It tells me that light pollution is not so bad that it's going to limit the glow I'm going to be able to see in the sky. And it can tell you if there's too much wildfire smoke, things like that, to prevent you from viewing the aurora. So starry nights are going to be the ticket. Can you always see the stars through the aurora? No, sometimes it's so bright it will start to outshine them. But generally, you're like, look in this photo here in the background. You're going to be able to see some of those stars through some parts of the transparent aurora. You also need the right conditions in space. And I'm going to go over this, but um, all of the strong aurora that we see here on Earth is created by solar activity that starts on the surface of our sun. That solar activity has to be directed the right way toward Earth. It has to have a good composition. It needs to be a high speed, high density, have a high power or strength, and a favorable BZ, which we're going to talk about. That's basically the gatekeeper to the Northern Lights. These conditions can change instantly. And I see a lot of people say, well, there's no way there was Northern Lights at that time on that night. The data did not support it. And my question to them is, what data were you looking at? Because you can look at magnetometers, you can look at solar wind parameters like the speed, density, and BZ. You can look at substorm alerts. You can look at all sorts of different parameters and types of measurements to try to figure out if the aurora is happening. And there's so many different types of data. I don't think any one amateur chaser is looking at all of it at the same time. Plus, there can be surprises. If you ask me, I believe in surprises. Now, to catch the aurora more often, it helps to understand what causes it. It's caused by the solar wind. This is solar activity. It's more than light, it's actually matter. It's solar plasma, it's particles and different solar makeup that is being ejected off of the sun's surface through space, flying toward Earth and Earth's atmosphere to cause the process that creates the northern lights. So, um, think about light. How long does it take light to reach Earth? Well, it's the speed of light, right? So fast, lickety split. Light happens and we see it. So those solar flares, we're going to see the light from that right away. But when you hear about a solar flare in the sun, um, a couple of things to consider. One is that not all solar flares actually eject into space. Our sun is this huge ball of dynamic energy and magnetism that some of those solar flares get sucked right back in to the sun's surface or the corona. When a solar flare does eject some of that plasma and some of those particles, it becomes the solar wind, it flies through space, and then we can look at the direction and the solar wind speed and things like that to determine whether or not we think it's going to create some strong impacts. This is called a coronal mass ejection. It's an ejection of that coronal mass or a CME. And these eruptions are really what we're looking for. So don't let a headline fool you when it says largest solar flare of the year. It was an X flare. Everyone get ready. No, unless that X flare fires a CME, it's not going to matter for the most part. Other types of solar activity can create strong aurora too, though. We're really looking for the strong stuff when we're talking about getting northern lights in places farther south. So coronal holes can emit high-speed streams of solar wind. Filaments can cause eruptions. We can get a glancing blow from some of these effects. And there's some more scientifically complex types of activity like co-rotating interactive regions. There is also sort of an ever-present solar wind. So this solar wind, this activity from our sun is sort of happening all the time at a low hum, for lack of a better word. And so the solar wind is always sort of happening at low levels outside of Earth's magnetic field. And at any given time when the conditions line, bam, we could see a substorm, we could see a burst, we could see pillars of aurora at really far distances here on Earth. You never know. So, and that's why when you go to places like Alaska and Norway and Iceland, as long as you have dark skies, and it's not midnight sun, and also clear skies without the clouds, you're usually going to be able to see at least a little bit of aurora every night. So, what happens when that solar wind enters Earth's magnetic field? Well, let's go back for a second. When that solar wind comes toward Earth, it then has to penetrate Earth's magnetic shield, outlined there in purple. It then has to penetrate Earth's magnetic field. And so all the conditions have to align. And when that happens, the aurora then, through a process, and we're really simplifying here, the aurora will be created filtering in through the North Pole and the South Pole of Earth. And so we get both the northern lights and the southern lights. What's happening then is those particles come into Earth's atmosphere and they charge up all the particles, and the particles collide with molecules of air like oxygen, nitrogen, helium. And when they collide, they emit color and light. And that is how we get the colors of the aurora. So oxygen at really high altitudes emits like a pink or a red. And that's why often when we're looking at the northern lights farther south, we're seeing that really high altitude pink or red glow. Then oxygen at low altitudes emits a green that's really famous for aurora colors, and that's why that's one of the most common aurora colors. We start to throw in hydrogen and helium, and we start to get some purples and pinks, and sometimes you can even get nitrogen to emit a rare blue. So why is this so hard to predict? If we know what's happening, we know it's coming from the sun's surface, we know it's creating space weather or solar wind, and that's sending potential for northern lights our way. Why can't we predict it? Well, this image is not to scale. We're looking at, our fiery sun firing off activity and Earth's magnetic field. But between the sun and the Earth, there are almost 93 million miles in between. So we actually have a couple spacecraft out there that are set to learn more about the sun. The Parker Solar Probe and the Solar Orbiter, are getting as close as they can to the sun to learn more about the makeup of some of that solar activity. And then outside of Earth, in Earth's orbit, we have many satellites and observatories like the Solar Dynamics Observatory or SDO or the ACE Advanced Composition Explorer. Those then are giving us data about the sun from Earth's orbit. And we have 93 million miles in between where we can sort of see that something's happening. We can image it and we can track it and we can detect it when it gets close to Earth, but we have no idea what's happening in between. Um, and so a lot of things can happen. We can get different types of solar activity and they can collide and maybe slow each other down, speed each other up. Maybe solar activity, we did have a CME that was fired off in Earth's direction, but it changed direction and it actually missed Earth completely. And then sometimes we just get the dreaded dud. Something loses speed in space, or who knows what happens out there. It just sort of disappears off the grid, never reaches Earth. Then we get the dreaded dud. The good thing, though, to know about this is that Earth's magnetic field naturally protects us. These solar storms can cause all types of different hazards and risk, including radiation for astronauts in outer space, and then impacts for our infrastructure and communications. But between Earth's magnetic field and Earth's ozone layer and all of that protective bubble that holds our beautiful blue dot, we are protected from the dangerous impacts of that, and that is all filtered out before it reaches Earth's atmosphere. So, what is the BZ? Well, the BZ then is actually going to determine, it's the gatekeeper. It's going to determine whether or not those particles and that solar wind from outer space can penetrate Earth's magnetic field, whether or not the energy that creates the aurora gets into Earth's atmosphere from outer space. So, for our purposes, Earth's magnetic field has a polar orientation oriented northward. And I love this award-winning graphic from the European Geophysical Union blog, where it shows Earth, he's just chilling, all protected, thumbs up. Northward oriented. Think about bar magnets in school. When you talk about magnetism, you can have um, the north side of a magnet and the south side of a magnet attract. But if you get the north side of a magnet and the north side of another magnet, those repel. And so we're really talking about magnetism and whether forces are being attracted to each other or repelled by each other. Earth, then, for our purposes, has a northward orientation. It's always going to be that way, whether you're at the North Pole or the South Pole. The sun, though, when it fires off the solar wind in each CME, each bit of activity, all that solar wind has its own embedded magnetic field that can have highly complex makeup. Sometimes it can be northward oriented, sometimes it can be southward oriented. When we're looking at the numbers, we're talking about positive, we're talking about negative. We want a negative BZ in order for, okay, let's say this is your solar wind. If you can see my little image here with my thumbs up, here's your solar wind coming at you. Here's Earth's northward orientation. Woo, two thumbs up. We've got fireworks. Okay. That actually is not true. When these two come together, they're not going to connect. Nope, no fireworks here. They're going to repel each other. But when we have a southward orientation, and that is a negative BC, a negative number comes toward Earth, it's going to create a connection, and then boom, good to go. Our fireworks should happen. A southward BZ or a negative BZ is going to open the gates for that flow of energy then to connect, to attract, and to let those particles enter Earth's upper atmosphere and start the process that creates aurora. Now, if that's oscillating back and forth, good deal, man. Fireworks again. Because each time that opens, we're gonna get woo, two thumbs up. We're gonna get a connection that creates a flow of energy and bam, Northern Lights. So negative BZ is what you're looking for. The more negative, the better. And here's sort of a graphic visualization. If you could see that solar wind as an orange phenomena in outer space, you see it hitting Earth's magnetic field in green and blue. Just picture it penetrating and forming a flow and then flowing in to Earth's magnetic field and Earth's atmosphere. Now, are there peak times to see this activity? Yes, generally speaking, although it really depends on when this hits Earth. The peak times are generally speaking 2 hours before and after local magnetic midnight. In Michigan, we're really lucky. Local magnetic midnight is almost midnight, so it's about the same, but it varies depending on where you are in the world. Um, there's a peak season for the aurora too, and this is both for scientific reasons where that BZ tends to be more favorable. It's also because we have more hours of nighttime or darkness. So the peak season generally falls kind of between the fall equinox and the spring equinox from September to April of every year. You can still see aurora in the summer in Michigan, though, and in the Great Lakes region. We're one of the luckiest places in the world because we don't have midnight sun. We get darkness all year round, and so there's always a chance when it's dark. There also is a peak period in the solar cycle. Depending on who you talk to, it's going to be the 11-year solar maximum, an 11-year peak in that solar cycle, or it takes another 11 years to complete the 22-year solar cycle, and that brings us another solar maximum. So as we head towards solar maximum, we get a gradual increase in all this activity until we peak, and then at solar maximum, then we gradually start to decrease in activity until we hit solar minimum, and then we bottom out and gradually begin to increase again. And last year, scientists were predicting that solar maximum in these recent years would be hitting in July of 2025. Now, that in itself is a prediction. They're looking back at February, they're looking back at months of last year where we had a lot of sunspots on the surface of the sun. We may have already hit solar maximum. But 2025 is supposed to be a good year. And again, it's going to be a gradual change. So we still have some really good chances of seeing aurora in 2025 and 2026 if the sun would just fire something our direction. There are many methods for forecasting the northern lights, and you can go from beginner all the way to advanced. So take a look, do a little reading. There's lots of options here. How far do you want to go? If you're starting with an app that you can download on your phone, those are going to be really basic and they can be a little misleading. They're going to start with KP alerts, and a lot of Aurora chasers are warning against using the KP because it's just not the most accurate prediction in real time. In fact, it's not accurate in real time. But webcams can be a fail-safe. A lot of the smartest Aurora chasers I know got started using webcams. And so a webcam is going to be one of the only things that's going to give you proof that Aurora is for real happening right there, right now. And you can look at webcams to your east as well as webcams in your time zone to sort of figure out how strong the aurora is getting, whether it will reach you next or if it will push far enough south or high enough in the sky for you to have a chance. Um, yeah, so I'm sharing lots of free tips here, and a little bit later, I'm going to drop my link for Buy Me a Coffee. I'd really love your support, just in the form of 1 cup of coffee on our tip jar website. Little donation goes a long way. Sometimes people ask me, Melissa, why do you do so much for free? Well, I don't mind, but every bit helps. Let's talk more about this though. You can also, at the beginner level, use the K index, and I can tell you more about that. In fact, I have a whole video on that if you want to subscribe to my channel. Um, You can look at predictions that are sent out by NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center. Those can be delivered directly to your email box for free. It's a 3-day forecast. The Ovation model is one I really love, and that uses the Hemispheric Power Index or the HPI. If you want to start diving in and get real deep real quick, go to spaceweatherlive.com. I love Space Weather Live. It's one of the most widely used and longest standing platforms for Aurora Chasers. Spaceweatherlive.com. They also have an app, Space Weather Live, and they're going to show you things like the real-time solar wind and let you view some coronagraphs and things like that. SolarHam on Facebook used to be a great place to turn. And there are more types of measurements you can use, like the AP index. You can do your own judgments and forecasting based on NASA's WSA-Enlil model. You could tap into the CME scoreboard. And magnetometer plots can show you when we're about to get a substorm, which will bring us some of the most powerful aurora that reaches farthest south. So the really pretty stuff. But you could go as far as analyzing CMEs, coronal mass ejections, or understanding flux ropes inside those CMEs and really get a whole PhD in astrophysics or heliophysics. So you can take this as far as you want. Okay, now that you know that, let's keep it simple. Let's go back to webcams. You can get alerts on the Telegram app, both from the Michigan Aurora Chasers at Michigan Aurora Alerts and from the Glendale app. The Glendale app, which is provided by Aurora Alerts UK, is going to be one I'm going to recommend, but you can't find this app in the App Store. You actually have to look it up on the internet and download it from the website. They're going to give you instructions there. And if you do that, be sure to keep that app updated because it is super connected. It's gonna affect usability kind of worldwide. But it gives you a really great plain text forecast. Tell me exactly what to expect right at the top, and then you can dig deep into the science as you get deeper into the app. Um, yeah, and then I've also, like I said, I've got a video that will show you how to get warnings and watches for strong aurora activity or strong geomagnetic activity, which is what this is really called, creates the aurora. From the Space Weather Prediction Center or the SWPC. So I'm actually well, nope, it's a few slides away. I'll show you a slide on what that looks like. If you want to get those emails for free, you can learn how. Okay, at this point, it's going to start to feel like one of the easiest ways to monitor strong aurora when you have a chance is using the real-time data about the solar wind. And you can find this on many apps, many websites, on NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center, which is an important government agency that actually serves us and protects us. So let's support our government agencies. The real-time solar wind, if you're looking for strong aurora in the mid-latitudes, places like Michigan, the Great Lakes region, even, Southern Europe and other parts of the world, you want a high solar speed. You want most of these numbers to be as high as possible. So we're looking for a speed of over 500 kilometers per second. Um, Density at 10 particles per cubic meter. We are going to get some moderate density, and the higher that is, the better. So at least 10 on density. BT then is going to be your total strength of that embedded magnetic field and that solar wind that's coming at us. The higher the BT, the better. And then BZ is that polarization of that magnetic field that's embedded in the solar wind. The lower that is, the better. Or if it jumps back and forth and is really unstable, that's also a good sign. Positive, negative, positive, negative. And in general, we are looking for a negative number. Negative 10 nanoteslas or lower is what I recommend for really strong aurora displays. Um, and BT will show you the potential of BZ to go in either direction. So if we have a BT of 10, we could have a BZ of positive 10 or negative 10 or anything between at any moment. Now that solar activity, we're watching it on the surface of the sun. We get about 3 days notice. It's going to matter where it's located on the sun that we're seeing this. We have different types of solar activity, different classes and classifications. So an X flare is going to be the strongest type of flare to fire off a CME, whereas M flares are almost as strong, and C flares are really kind of low level flares on the classification. So watch, for those classifications and look for that CME or some type of solar wind, high speed stream, something coming at us, something ejected. Has to be directed toward Earth, obviously. They also get aurora on places like Jupiter and Mars, if I'm not speaking correctly, most of the planets. And then the polar orientation, that BZ, is going to make or break your night, the gatekeeper. So if you don't want to use the data, the solar wind parameters, you're also going to see the KP. This comes from the K index, and it measures geomagnetic strength on a really simple scale. So, yes, geomagnetic activity causes aurora. It's not really the same thing as aurora, but they're highly correlated, especially when you get to geomagnetic storm levels. So, the K index is really simple. It's a scale from 0 to 9, 0 being the weakest, 9 being the strongest. That's how strong we can see this activity. Or a lot of people will call it for short, like me, aurora strength. So, aurora strength on a scale from 0 to 9, 9 being the greatest possible strength. Once we hit KP4, then we start to see, okay, this is going to reach farther south than Canada potentially. This is going to reach farther south than the normal regions a little bit. KP4 is actually considered kind of standard aurora activity. You can see then aurora in Upper Peninsula of Michigan, northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, maybe, northern North Dakota, places like that. KP4 is going to help you out. At KP5, though, we start to hit storm levels. This is an equivalent. So KP5 is the same as a G1 storm. That is going to bring in my region, Aurora, down to the 45th parallel, right overhead. And a KP5 can reach the middle of Michigan. It can reach lots of other places through, the middle of Minnesota, middle of Wisconsin. So a KP5 is the same as a G1 storm. It's going to bring some stronger aurora. At KP6, we hit a G2 storm, that's the equivalency, and that will push aurora even farther south the stronger it gets. KP7 is the same as a G3, KP8 is the same as a G4, and a KP9 maxes out the scale is the same as a G5 storm. So for my Michigan folks, if you're looking for all state potential in Aurora, with this K index, what you're really looking for is a KP6, same as a G2 storm. And actually, once we hit those G2 storm levels, we tend to see some really good stuff. It could always get stronger, even sometimes when we hit G1. But this is not just pretty lights and colors. This is actually a geomagnetic pulse. It's an electrical, not electrical, but an energy that is entering Earth's atmosphere and actually wreaking havoc in some ways. So at G1 storm levels, we can see weak impacts on the power grid and fluctuations there. Um, Impacts on satellites are possible. We might see a little satellite shake. Migratory birds and other animals can sense this and they're affected. At G2 storm levels, we start to see transformer damage. With long duration storms, we have to take corrective actions to keep our spacecraft in orbit in the correct way. And we can start to see other impacts as well. At G3 storm levels, we're actually starting to see some power voltage or power system voltage corrections that need to be made. And we start to see ham radio operations affected. You can even have your GPS, if it's satellite based, start to malfunction. So lots of different impacts on our communications and infrastructure. Then it gets even stronger at G4 storms, which is a severe geomagnetic storm. We could see widespread voltage control problems on the power grid. Again, problems with radio. Satellite navigation is degraded for hours and radio navigation issues. And then at a G5 storm level, this is really extreme. We've seen power blackouts in certain parts of the world. During the worst possible scenario, we could see complete power grid collapse. But that is why we forecast these things. That is why our national agencies are trying to get better at predicting space weather to protect us and have a backup plan when some of these things hit. Now, again, just a few slides ago, we were talking about the K index and the KP and that KP scale of 0 to 9. The thing to remember, though, about KP is that when you see the P is actually a planetary average of the K index. So you can get a K index locally for your region from certain stations that are measuring local impact. But when you're looking at the KP, you're looking at a planetary average. This means a couple things. One, it's the way that in the US we do our national forecast. The Space Weather Prediction Center is using KP to forecast how strong aurora is, and it can help you know, or how strong aurora might be. It can help you know how far south that is going to reach by latitude. So it's useful in that way. It's not good in real time, though. Because to get the KP, they take an average of 3 hours of data from magnetometers measured at stations at 13 stations around the world. They take all that data, they average it together, they spit out one number, and they're telling you that on average, over the last 3 hours around the planet, the K index was KP4. Okay, great. But that is not an exact science, and that is often referring to the past. You may get a KP alert on your phone, says KP5. It's telling you aurora looks great tonight. Maybe you should go outside. And that KP5 is referring to the past 3 hours, not necessarily the hours to come. Now, KP can be good for watching trends, and maybe it will stay at KP5 and go higher. But when you're looking at KP, it's a planetary average and it could mislead you. When you're using that K index or that KP index, though, and trying to see how it lays out on a map, here in the Michigan Aurora Chasers, we're really focused on Michigan. This is what it looks like when that aurora reaches us. So KP4 reaches our upper peninsula on the beautiful Great Lakes. A KP5 goes right above the 45th parallel. That's the same as the G1 storm. And a KP6 reaches our entire state on down to the states below us, low on the horizon for Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, maybe even Pennsylvania at a KP6. And that's how that lines up for us. Anything stronger than that is going to be good news. It's going to bring really strong aurora. So, how can you get those K alerts of just the regular K index? Can you get warnings and watches? Yes, I have a whole video on how to subscribe to alerts from the Space Weather Prediction Center. Look that up on my YouTube or hit the subscribe button. You can learn how to get the 3-day forecast emailed to you, as well as warnings and watches for some of those geomagnetic storms. And that being the stronger type of impact that brings aurora, that is the good stuff. So that's what you want. You can get that free in your email. Now, what I really like for beginners is the ovation model, and it works pretty well most of the time, but there is one exception to where it could glitch. Or if we're getting bad data from our satellites, which are running at the end of their stage of life, that could also cause glitches. But the ovation model, you can look it up on our website at michiganaurorachasers.com/links. It's right there. You can refresh this any time of night or day. It's like a website that just appears in your browser. What it's going to show you is a view of the world from the top down. So the North Pole is in the center, and we're looking at the top half of the globe from the top down. The aurora oval then rotates around the North Pole following nighttime. And you'll see a darker side of that map where that's actually nighttime around the globe. You can't see the aurora during the day, but when the sun sets, the aurora rises in a manner of speaking, and it can start in your northeast and then come directly north as you approach the middle of the night, and then just before the sun rises, the aurora sets in a manner of speaking, and you can see it off in the northwest. You can see the aurora. Um, so the deepest part of this oval is going to come directly overhead in your area, hopefully in the middle of the night. What you're seeing here is the probability of aurora on a color legend. That's really going to help you out. Little bit of green, that's not much to get excited about for those that are chasing further south. When it gets a brighter green, that's a little bit more probability. We start to see yellow and orange. That means we're really getting some good hemispheric power in Earth's northern hemisphere. And then when it turns red, I like to say that means go outside. If this baby turns red, Aurora is hot and we've got a really good chance. Now, how do you read this whole thing then? You've got that scale with that legend that shows you the approximate energy deposited into Earth's atmosphere on a scale. Let's look at the other corners of the model. In the top left, you are seeing basically the logo and name of, our agencies here and the Aurora forecast. NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center Aurora forecast. And then it's going to give you a bunch of numbers, but this is really just the year, day, and time of when this is happening. So this is the aurora forecast for 2022 of 0904. That was about Labor Day of 2022. And then the time in a universal time coordinated format. So 0600 hours and 2 minutes, which if we do a time conversion for Michigan during the summer months, that would be -4 hours. So 0200 hours and 2 minutes 2 o'clock in the morning. So this is saying NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center Aurora forecast for date and time. And then we go cat corner to that to the bottom corner with all the digits and numbers. And again, it's just the Ovation Aurora model. Now they're giving you the model runtime at year, day, month, and time, and universal time coordinated, and the time the L1 observations were taken at. So L1 is where that satellite is located in outer space at the L1 Lagrange point. The L1 observations taken at year, month, date, time, and universal time coordinated. And you'll want to learn universal time because you're going to see it everywhere. So it's useful to know it. Now, my favorite part of the ovation model, though, is the last corner that we haven't talked about yet. And that's that top corner that says forecast lead time and HPI. This corner gives you two pieces of information that are going to help you on any night. The forecast lead time tells you in 42 minutes, we project that the hemispheric power index, or HPI, will be at 104.3 gigawatts of hemispheric power. Anything over 90 is a heck of a lot of gigawatts. Anything over 60 is really kind of quite good. And anything over 30 means you at least have a fighting chance of seeing aurora at lower latitudes. So, two things here: forecast lead time in 42 minutes, we're going to see a hemispheric power of 104.3 gigawatts. That's a lot of gigawatts. I would get outside. Now, when you look for the Aurora, or I'm sorry, the Ovation model, just beware. There's several different versions of it. One is the video format. When you watch this on video, right until you get to that very end there, only the last second or two is a prediction. The rest of it is the last 24 hours. The next one you're going to see is this really pixelated red donut version, is what they've been calling it. And you'll notice here, this version, not only does it look way too red and exaggerated on the map, but this one in the middle also does not even mention hemispheric power. It's talking about KP. So tomorrow night's aurora forecast, tonight's aurora forecast, when you see those headings on this graph, take it with a grain of salt because Aurora Chasers agree this is exaggerated. It's also only giving you KP. It's not talking about hemispheric power at all. And this, unfortunately, is the model that's running on the homepage of NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center. So we don't love that. But the one that I love is the 30-minute to real time model, which is linked on our website. The link is kind of hard to find otherwise. It's going to give you that lead time and that hemispheric power index any time of day or night. All you have to do is hit refresh on the URL. And you can find all these websites on my website or on the MichiganAuroraChasers.com website. We've got it all there. So when you're trying to catch Aurora too, it helps to watch not, don't pick up your phone, look at one set of numbers and then, okay, I'm done for the night. It's over. It's not happening. This changes constantly. It's way better to watch how it's trending over time. So what's trending? So the NASA Advanced Composition Explorer provides this real-time solar wind data that we can use then to figure out how aurora is trending over time. And when you go to the website and check this out, you can actually set it for the last 6 hours, the last 26 hours, or I'm sorry, the last 24 hours. You can really sort of customize it. Let's look at this graph from the bottom up. In green at the bottom, you have temperature, not super important. We can skip that one. In yellow, on the chart, you have speed. Speed is really important. Like we said, we're looking for over 500 kilometers per second. The higher, the better. But if this is starting to go above 400, 450, and the other numbers are aligning, you might be in luck. And you can see how that's ebbing and flowing over time. It may go up, it may go down, and you may see some peaks and valleys. Density. Density often will bring you a lot of those particles, really dense solar wind, and when they collide with molecules of air, more color and more light. So we love a high density. I think that anything above one is actually going to be okay. Um, but again, we're looking for 10 or better if you really want fantastic aurora. If you're getting no density at all, you may have a really hard time. So density is the one in orange. The next one up is phi. We don't really use that in aurora chasing, so you're off the hook on that one. But the top part of this chart is really important. This is showing you two things. One is BT, which is the total power of the interplanetary magnetic field, and the other is BZ, which is how that IMF or embedded magnetic field is oriented, the polar orientation. And so we want BZ to be below the dotted line. We want it to be negative, below zero. The farther negative, the better. But if it's bouncing back and forth, again, the gatekeeper, those gates are swinging open and closed, and there's still a chance. So BZ here is your red line. We want that to be below zero. And it could go as far in either direction as BT, the total power, the total potential of BZ to go in either direction, which is a white line. And when I first took the screenshot, I thought, wow, you can't even see BT here. It's not on this graph, but it is. It's all the way at top. It's up at 10. So at any second, that BZ with some other changes could flip to negative 10 or positive 10, either direction. All right. So, other things to think about. The darker your skies, the better. We talked about looking for those stars. They can also help you know when you're far enough out of the city lights. And here's sort of a ranking of dark skies on the Bortle scale. When you're in a Bortle 1, you have some of the best dark skies available, and you're going to have the best potential to see great northern lights. And when you're closer into the city at a Bortle 8 or a Bortle 9, you might be out of luck. Although the strongest aurora will appear inside the city limits. That's just extremely, extremely rare. So don't get used to it. I would say though that I've chased aurora a lot in the suburbs, and even if you can get to the orange or the yellow on the scale, a Bortle 6 or a Bortle 5, you might have a chance, especially if you're really trying to optimize your chances. So where do you go? Well, we've got all kinds of resources to help you figure out viewing locations and where to go, not just in Michigan and the Great Lakes region or the US as a country, but around the world. On the Michigan Aurora Chasers website, we have those resources. You can use light pollution maps like this one, though, to find a spot near you. And I've got a whole video on that. If you want to subscribe to my channel, watch the video on how to find a viewing location anywhere. I walk you through how to use these maps to really zoom in and hone in on where you're located or where you're chasing and where your dark skies will be. You want to avoid these red bubbles, obviously, and the purple and gray in the middle of the inner cities. And you want to try to get as far out to the blue and purple and dark spots as possible. But as long as you have none of this red light pollution desert to your north, you should be in good shape. So not only think about what your dark skies look like where you're standing, but also think about what you're going to be seeing to your north. How to photograph the Northern Lights. This is a common question, and we've got lots of resources and video guides on the Michigan Aurora Chasers website under our guides and videos. Um, there's a lot to it actually. And yeah, your camera settings are going to vary depending on how bright the aurora are or where you're photographing them. You're going to want to learn the exposure triangle and balance your aperture and shutter speed with your ISO. So dig into those camera lessons. But here's a few tips too. The right equipment is going to take you a long way. Always use a tripod. Even on a cell phone, it's going to balance your camera and it's going to give you pinpoint stars. And then the aurora will move and wave and create shapes around that. But if you can get those stars still or your silhouettes in focus, then you're going to be in good shape. So, a tripod. A lot of people like to use a remote to operate their camera, whether it's a cell phone or a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, so that they don't shake the camera while it's taking those photos. And when you're out at night or in the cold, especially, your batteries may run out really fast. So, extra batteries are always a great option. You're not going to want to zoom in. Go for wide camera angles. The wider, the better, because you're really going to want to try to capture as much of the night sky as you can. Ideally, you're going to be seeing aurora in every direction. Not always, but it does happen. Any modern digital camera or phone camera within the last 2 to 3 years, though, is going to have a lot of awesome low light photography potential. And when you use the right settings, especially on manual, you're going to be able to get those aurora photos. So, here's some photos I took on my iPhone 14, just a standard iPhone up in Alaska when the aurora was really dancing there. And you can get some amazing photos even on your cell phone, believe me. So, sharing that. We also have a brand new tool available on the Michigan Aurora Chasers website. You can scan that QR code and you can get to our camera note card. This is going to give you beginner camera settings for any device or camera. We think we're trying to put them all there, starting camera settings, and then depending on how bright the aurora get, how fast it moves, how much definition you want, how much it fills the sky with lights, you're going to adjust as you go. But go get those beginner camera settings, and that's going to help you get started. More photos of the Northern Lights in Michigan. These were taken, I believe, on my iPhone 15. And yeah, so you can get really beautiful images. I often am leading live chases or guided aurora chases like the one I did here with people on the beach. And so I'm often doing handheld photographs and really not concentrating on the work. That's what I leave to all of you. But notice how vivid and neon some of these colors are. That color is always going to pop, and it's almost always going to be brighter on camera, even before you use Photoshop or any editing at all, because the camera, especially on long exposure, captures more color and light than the human eye can see in the dark. And the way that our phones are really using automated editing features, night mode that has a lot of presets, and even some of those AI functions, your photos may be edited a lot before you even get them out of a phone camera, for example. So, so you're really going to see these images pop with neon color. Just remember, though, even though I saw beautiful, brilliant colors to my eye without even trying on all of these nights, you may not see the colors that you're expecting if this is what you're expecting when you go out looking for the northern lights. It can be very subtle at first. And you have to let your eyes adjust to the dark. Now, if you were to go chasing aurora in the northern parts of the world, like the Northwest Territories of Canada, you can easily see the colors and all types of colors in every direction, depending on your own human eyesight. It's important to note, I think, that you can have two aurora chasers standing right beside each other, watching the same aurora at the same time in the same place on the same night. And they can have two totally different experiences. This is because each individual has their own unique eyesight, and it's going to vary what you're able to see and what you're able to detect when you stand out under the night sky. Part of it has to do with how much time have you let your eyes acclimate to the dark? Spend at least a good 30 seconds, more like a good 5 minutes. Some people recommend a good 20 to 30 minutes letting your eyes adjust to darkness to be able to see more color and light in the night. So acclimate to the dark. Another thing, though, is if you have had cataract surgery or if you um, or I'm sorry, if you have cataracts or you've had eye surgery, or if you wear corrective lenses, or if you've had anything done to your eyes or study with this or struggle with astigmatism, all of those different things can affect how you perceive color and light, especially at night and your night vision. There are even things that can lead eyesight to be different when we're talking about, okay, maybe someone has a little bit of color blindness. Young people often see more color than older adults because their eyes are so young and so youthful and so healthy. So, there's even one study that found that women often see more color in the night sky than men. And so there are all these different factors based on your own individual unique eyesight, your own experience, whether you've acclimated to the dark, how dark your skies are, how healthy your eyes are, that can really impact your experience of viewing the Northern Lights. Everyone might be able to see it differently. But there's a lot to see, especially if you're using a camera. In fact, one of our favorite tips in the Michigan Aurora Chasers is to take a test shot, even if you see nothing at all. Point your camera north, on good settings or on night mode if it's your phone, low to the horizon, take a photo in the middle of the night and look. Even if you see nothing at all, you may take a photo and bam, pillars are rising up on your camera. You never know what you're going to see, and the photographs are always amazing. So here are some photographs from the Michigan Aurora Chasers. We not only have a Facebook page, but we have a Facebook group, and we have a lot of events we're doing everywhere. In fact, I'm doing talks everywhere, and I've got a book and I've got other things that you can get involved with, even places to submit your photos. So there's a lot going on, and we want to help you get the most out of the chase. Now, the biggest geomagnetic storm, the hottest aurora display in the last 21 years or more, was probably May 10th of 2024. And this is what it looked like on the Ovation model. We maxed out the scale that night with a G5 storm, which is the same as a K9. And so that was the strongest aurora rating possible, the strongest K index and G storm scale possible. That was May 10th of 2024. Now we got a repeat October 10th of 2024 when it was also pretty similar to this strength, not quite so strong. But I was excited to be interviewed for USA Today and on the local news and leading a live chase of 75 people that night to witness it themselves. So we do a live chase when we think you're going to see the aurora and we announce it on short notice that night. We also do guided aurora chases. We call it the Michigan Aurora Experience, where we're going to let you plan in advance, book a hotel, come out with us, learn what it takes to catch the aurora, whether it's subtle or not. So here's some photos taken, one by Karen Sawatowski of this church that she saw on location at the live chase I did on May 10th, 2024. Over 75 people burst into applause that night as we all caught the aurora together, and it was so magical. And I'm glad she had this eye to see this reflecting pond in front of the church where we had permission to be overnight. Um, Then in June, on June 10th, our group became so large, over 100,000 members, that we held a celebration in a statewide live chase. And at that lighthouse there, you can see us waiting for the aurora to pop. And it did just after the sunset. Now, in this photo by Jen Boss, well, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Lauren Kovich. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name okay, who took this photo of me in the live chase, May 10, 2024. That's her cell phone shot as we saw the aurora burst right after sunset in Michigan. And then this photo by Jen Bosmanka is actually from one of our Michigan Aurora Experience events, which are announced on the events page on our website, where we let you plan in advance and come out. We've held three of them now, and we are 2 for 3 on catching the Northern Lights with no plans at all to see it. We didn't even know if we'd have good weather. So there it is. You see everyone gathering on the beach on a guided aurora chase. And this is the kind of stuff that we just love to do. So I wanted to share some more tips to help you get the most out of your Aurora Chase. You can get my favorite Aurora chasing hacks on my website. Here's a QR code for that. Hop over to kaelinart.com/Aurora. That's KAELINART.com. We also have a guide from the Michigan Aurora Chasers to help you find a viewing location, and it includes a list of over 45 exact viewing locations in Michigan, in the Great Lakes region, in the US, in the world. Um, so these are articles that have already been published, but you're going to find these listicles that will help you out. There's the QR code. We also offer Aurora alerts, and we're about to expand this. So when you visit our alerts page, definitely check out what we have to offer. Um, Download the Telegram app, and you can get free alerts from our team of spotters when Aurora is in Michigan. And this will it's not like Facebook where you get a delayed reaction, you see a notification 6 days later that someone posted. It will buzz your phone instantly. It will ping your phone. It'll make a sound and alert you awake at night. So download the free Telegram app. Lock down your settings because it's not the world's best app. And then subscribe to Michigan Aurora Alerts. You can also follow us on Instagram at My Aurora Chasers. We talked about doing live alerts there, but this took off faster. So, from our Telegram app, we're going to tell you when the aurora is actually happening in Michigan. Here's our website, michiganaurorachasers.com. We also have the Facebook group, the Facebook page. Our website is actually hosted on WordPress, so you can you can add that to your WordPress list, and you can subscribe for free to email updates. We don't send those very often, once a month at max. And then there's our Instagram and our Telegram alerts as well. Join in. We have lots of events coming up. The My Aurora Experience is one that I hope to do very often, getting us out under the night sky. Every year we hold the Michigan Aurora Chasers Workshop. We held the third annual Aurora Chasers Workshop at Headlands International Dark Sky Park this year, and it was a huge success. We also do socials when we're able to, and the live chase when the aurora are actually happening and bringing the heat and excitement. But there's also lots of festivals and summits and conventions you can get involved in. And we have a lot of guides available. I have a lot of guides available. I've spent a lot of time developing guides to empower you to find the best spot to see aurora no matter the conditions. Our Michigan Aurora resource list has a list of webcams, a list of books we recommend, list of apps we recommend, all sorts of things you can find on our Michigan Aurora resources. I write an advice blog with advice on chasing the aurora in the US, and my advice has helped thousands of people now to see the Northern Lights for the first time. And of course, I've got a whole playlist on aurora chasing in your backyard right here on YouTube. Here's a link to my advice blog. If you want to scan that, grab that QR code. All kinds of topics, including ideas for viewing locations, how to catch the corona, and even ways to use KP that are not going to mislead you or misguide you. So when I started the Michigan Aurora Chasers, I founded the group in January of 2021. And it took off so fast and became so popular. I began writing all these tutorials to help people who didn't realize they could see the aurora right in their backyard. And I've helped a lot of people to see the aurora now in their backyard. That's what I love to do. I've seen it in my backyard in the middle of light polluted Ann Arbor, Michigan. But the tutorials were so popular. I turned them into the blog. The blog became so popular, I turned it into a book, which I now have available for sale on Barnes& and Noble, Amazon.com, even on other independent sites. And that then led to, hey, why don't you teach it in video? That would make this way easier. So grab this link to get my book. The first edition is now technically out of print, but you can get the second edition, and there may be another one coming soon. So grab that book. I also co-founded the Aurora Summit. You're welcome to come. In 2025, it will be held November 5th, or I'm sorry, November 7th through 9th, 2025. Double check me on that. It's the weekend. We're going to be featuring keynote speaker Dan Zafra, the creator of Capture the Atlas, and you don't want to miss that. You can find more information at theaurorasummit.com. And there's my official website. All kinds of advice for you and lots of tips, stories of my adventures, and ways to go behind the scenes and follow what I'm doing now. And you can connect with me as well. Lots of ways to follow me on Instagram, Blue Sky, Facebook, X technically. But thank you so much for watching and for your interest and excitement about the Northern Lights. I wish you all the best, lots of clear skies and dancing nights. And yeah, happy chasing. If you'd like to support my work, subscribe to my channel or buy me a coffee. It's just this coffee link coff.ee/mfkalen. And you can buy me just one cup of coffee. That's more than enough to help support the hobby and the habit and keep me awake at night. And we're just so glad to have you with us. So thank you for watching. Good luck on the Aurora Chasing Trail, and here's hoping for more Aurora activity soon. I'm sure that we will get some amazing views in the coming months and years ahead.